what I don't know is when I get home, he presses the button again. I'm sitting on the bog, and he's like, "Yeah, got you now, boy." These are the audio.
See, that's the audio that we're talking about. So welcome to the Tranquil Key podcast, and we've got Leo back. So welcome back, Leo.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Good. And we've got Neil Swailes.
Yeah, kia ora tato.
Oh, there we go. So I think this has been a long time coming, Neil. Having you on.
It's a bit like me coming to the gym. Time coming it was, yeah.
Actually, Najee actually said that. So probably we met maybe 13 or 14 years ago. And I thought I'd let you tell the audience what it was like when you first met me and how your life changed for the better when you did. So no, I'm just joking. But I'll tell you how when I first saw Neil. So I was. I
love how he asked you the question to tell it, but now he's going to tell it. Okay,
it was a silly question I had asked.
All right.
Yeah.
Carry on.
But I was at ground control. I think I'd only just started, and I was just doing jiu-jitsu and walked in. You were taking an MMA class at the time, and you were still training with the boys like Shane and Evander. Anyway, there was a whole bunch of other people there too, and just sparring. And I was like looking at this, going, these guys are actually sparring like pretty hard. And you catching a few clips from Shane, and anyway, so I was just like, okay, these guys are pretty gnarly. And anyway, so that's where I first saw you. I didn't quite introduce myself to you, but that was the first time I was like, oh, okay, there's Neil. And then obviously I went off and did my jiu-jitsu stuff, but anyway, so that's all the way back then.
Yeah, when was that, John? Can you remember what year?
Well, I started in 2012, so it must have been around 2012, 2013. So
right.
So maybe so 10 odd years ago. Crazy,
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But I thought because you've been around the scene forever, so
He's calling you old.
Yeah, I'm hearing it. Yeah.
So I wanted to like take us back to New Zealand when MMA was when you first started getting into MMA. Like, what did that look like? Who were the people? What is the scene like? How did you even get into martial arts in the first place?
This is going to be a memory test, okay? So I guess I got into martial arts originally in 89, I think, watching the Commonwealth Games at that point, so 89, 90, watching Brent Cooper win the 60-kilo gold medalist for the judo, and then Mike Kenny in the boxing, and that was kind of an in for me.
Yeah.
I guess we grew up in a golden age. We had free-to-air TV with boxing every weekend. We had sumo on every week. We had a lot on TV, so it was an easy transition. And pro wrestling was pretty important back then too. So there was a lot of pro wrestling around. So my brother and I used to get into a lot of strife around the streets with the other kids in Papakura, and my mum decided she'd had enough and decided to put us in judo.
So what's the strife? What is the strife?
Oh, just kid stuff, fighting with other kids. And
First, because you said pro wrestling, I was picturing you guys wrestling on the street, and I was like, no, they must be just throwing some punches. Like, come here, I want to tombstone you. Yeah.
So wrestling was part of the problem, yeah. So, in those days, we had trampolines, but they weren't like you get now, where they're all fenced in.
Oh, yeah. You'd fall off those things, so go through the springs, yeah.
Everybody would pro wrestle on the trampoline, and stitches and broken arms and stuff were kind of a weekly.
Yeah.
So it was just, my mum put me into judo with my brother. It was a 3-month trial class, I think, for free at that point.
Okay.
So it was a pretty strange thing to have. She threw us in that, and then, from there, it just kind of evolved. So, that was probably about 91 that I started in judo. So 1991. Yeah.
Okay.
And that was the kickoff. From there, I did judo for about 5 years. I was competing quite a bit. Started to wrestle at the same time as well. Still enjoyed boxing and stuff. So, and back in the day, you didn't have a lot of YouTube access or anything like that. So they really
just videotapes.
Either pirated videotapes that come third hand, and then you had to find someone with an NTSC or whatever it was player to play it.
Yeah.
They were grainy and fuzzed out.
Yeah.
Or the other thing was a Fight Times magazine in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And they used to just write stuff about all the different martial arts, and they wrote about the first Ultimate Fighting competition in '93, and then obviously there was one here in about '95, and I remember telling my mum, "That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sign up to that," and she hit the roof. So yeah, I didn't sign up for that one.
Damn.
But
So
eventually I got into it.
You say the UFC came here, or that?
No, it was a cage fight down in Dunedin. So, yeah.
Of course, Dunedin.
Yeah. Open weight.
That's where it's
open
needed.
rules, I
What
think.
year again?
Yeah.
91.
It was about 95.
Oh, 95.
Might have been a little bit later, but it was around that time. I remember I was still at school and I wanted to sign up.
Damn.
And actually compete.
You would have been good.
Yeah.
You would have killed somebody.
I would have died. Yeah. This 17, 18-year-old kid wanted to fight grown men in an open weight, no rules tournament. It probably wasn't the best idea. So listen to your mum's, kids. Yeah. But yeah, I never told my mum that I was doing it until, geez, I don't know if I ever told her that I was doing MMA, to be honest. She certainly never came and watched. She thought I was doing judo right up until mid-2000s, maybe.
Really?
Yeah.
Jeez. Wow.
How'd you get that black eye? Judo.
Yep.
How'd you get that other black eye? Judo.
I think it's a violent sport.
Yeah. Judo's really violent. Well, it is.
Why is your arm in a cast?
Yeah, judo. Well, that could be judo, definitely. Oh.
No way.
So yeah, that was kind of it was kind of a natural transgression, I think, across. Once I'd started, it just kind of unfolded in front of me. Yeah.
So when was your first competition, like your first MMA fight?
MMA fight, 99 or 2000, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
In New Zealand or?
New Zealand,
Yeah.
So I fought, I don't know, maybe half a dozen times in New Zealand. The scene sort of dried up here for a while, and I ended up fighting in Aussie. So I'd go over there and stay for a month or two and try and get as many fights in as I could, and then come back home. Yeah.
So when you say as many fights, like how many would you?
Like one or two a weekend.
Wow. What?
Well, so you
MMA
fight twice
fights?
in a weekend?
Yeah. If I could,
Was it
I'd
a
fight
tournament
Fridays.
style or?
Nah, just fight Friday
Just fight.
and then go somewhere else and fight on Saturday. Yeah.
And were you being paid at this time?
Oh, paid minimally. I fought an Australian title for $60.
No way.
Yeah. So it was there wasn't a lot of money. I wasn't making money.
$60 would have been your accommodation and that's it?
Yeah.
Wow.
So staying in backpackers, bussing around. Yeah.
Damn.
Jeez, man.
That was in front of how many people?
500-600, I guess. They'd fill out those small venues.
Yeah.
The RSLs.
Yeah.
Places like that. So. Yeah.
So the scene there was.
It was growing there. It was like we probably in New Zealand we'd gone first, so we'd kicked off first, but then we had this massive lull and Aussie really started to kick off, and they had a couple of competing shows, which always sort of stirs things up. So
Yeah.
so it was getting along for a while.
Yeah.
And they'd had, as I said, that cage combat in Australia that they had was probably the first big one they had, and they had 3 Kiwis fight on that, and they had Mario Sperry fight on it. And then after that, a little bit of a drop for them, but they kicked off again with some of the smaller shows and started to build up a bit of a scene, and they kind of didn't stop after that.
So when you say that the scene dried up, like what happened like during that time?
I'm not really too sure, mate, to be honest. The promoters just, either turned attention elsewhere or what have you, and there just wasn't much of a scene, so it was kind of going great guns under the Amateur Valley Tudo Association and then kind of just stopped.
Right.
So it was guys like Carl Weber, Michael Gent, Chris Easley. They were all part of that sort of setting that up, but it takes a lot of, ongoing work to keep it moving. So
Yeah. So and now, like compared like now to what it was when you were competing, like what's the difference? Is there is there a difference, or do you think it's like pretty much the same?
no, they're different sports. It's completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean,
You're not allowed to punch in the nuts now, John. It's a different sport.
I mean, back then, people didn't know what they were doing. I remember when I fought on Carl's show, I think we had one pair of gloves for each corner for the whole fight night, and you switched gloves. And the gloves were literally a piece of foam with some rubber elastic on them, and that was it.
Damn.
They'd been imported. He'd paid a lot of money. They were what it was in the industry, but it wasn't there. Guys used to fight. Some guys were fighting gis. You'd see ninjutsu guys, like purist ninjutsu fighting. So the sport was nothing. If you could do one thing well, you're probably going to win. If you could do 2 things even moderately well, you're winning. So
true.
It's not the same nowadays.
Yeah. So when you were training MMA, were you also training? Were you still carrying on with your judo? Were you doing any jiu-jitsu at that time?
No, I'd stopped judo. I'd get sick of getting my knees and elbows injured, so I'd stopped judo for a while. And I'd moved up into town actually to train with Chris Easley at Focus. So for a while there, I was doing twice a day, driving 110k. Yeah, so I was getting sick of doing that. So I moved into town, and Chris had just opened a gym called Focus in Greylin. So I was training predominantly MMA. There was a little bit of blend there. They would do some stand-up stuff and some fitness stuff, but it was predominantly just MMA as we knew it then.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was predominantly there for a while. Yeah, that was really it for quite a long time, and then Focus wound up. I don't know, I guess maybe 2004, 5.
So what happened there? Like, why did you just go somewhere else? Or
Yeah, so there wasn't anything. So there was a group of us that kind of just tried to find somewhere to train for a little while. And we ended up getting termed the Lost Boys. And sort of moved around. So we were trying places like Youth Town and Town and stuff like that. But we were having to pay just casual rates. So it was pretty expensive. And we ended up out at Strikeforce Gym with Aaron Boys.
Oh, really?
So Aaron gave us a couple of nights a week where we could do MMA or sub-grappling. So there was myself, Mike Sethner, Jonathan Bell, and a few others that sort of did that, and we did that for quite a long time till Strikeforce built up, and then Carl came in on Strikeforce on a Sundays, and a bit of joint training with Carl, and then eventually I moved out this way, and then I ended up at Ground Control eventually.
Yeah. So the Strikeforce, is that the same guy at Auckland MMA or no, not Auckland MMA? Who are the guys down in Lombard Drive? No, so I'm thinking of Hamish and...
Yeah, so Hamish was with Strikeforce originally. When Hamish came over, he was, I think I met Hamish online, and he was talking about coming over. So I said, look, we've got a little gym here if you want to come here.
Yeah.
So he was with Strikeforce for a while, and then, he ended up starting at Auckland MMA.
Okay, yeah. So when did you start at Ground Control? Like, when did that all...
I couldn't tell you. That's kind of why I asked you about...
No, when it was there, yeah.
But I think 2009, I think, roughly.
Okay.
Yeah. I hurt my neck in 2007, had a couple of years off, and then I think 2009 was probably Ground Control.
Okay, sounds like there's a story there. Is it a
No,
sports injury, that neck injury, or is that something else?
Yeah, I fractured C2, C3, and prolapsed the disc and had to bleed on my column. Yeah.
From
MMA bout. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
From an MMA fight?
Yep.
Jeez.
So I was in triangle, so I hooked up a triangle, and then rather than doing all the technical things right, I decided to lean back and try and elbow the guy in the head. So he just picked me up and put me straight back down on the top of my head.
Oh.
Just a bad angle. Yeah.
So what spiked you onto the floor?
Yeah, effectively. So
Wow.
yeah. So spiked and rolled over, I guess.
Yeah.
Stapled over myself, but yeah.
And were you keep going from all the adrenaline, or were you like, there's something wrong?
I couldn't breathe. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Yeah.
So they called it there.
Yeah. So pretty tense for a little while.
Yeah.
Couldn't drive a car. Couldn't be in a car for 6 months.
So what
Just you couldn't be in that position.
No, because if it would have been a nose to tail, then the possibility of severing the cord was through the roof. So yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So
Just another day in the office.
My list of injuries, but it's probably the one that called it quits.
on your MMA?
Yeah. I was pretty much done anyway, to be honest. I think I'd had 6 fights in 5 weeks at that point. And the guy was saying, I need it. He had a dropout, and he was like, I need you to come in.
Here's
Like,
$60, come on.
Do it. That one I was reasonably well paid for.
Okay.
I'll give it that one. But
The last part of my career. It's like...
Break your spine. Here you go. Yeah, I'll take it.
So that kind of brought an end to all that, and I had a couple of years off, and then ended up at Ground Control probably about 2009, I think, roughly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then did you start like just coaching there, or was it just taking being in classes?
I think I started coaching. I think it was originally Mike Sethner talked me into coming to Ground Control.
Was Mark Sethner at Ground Control at that
Very
point?
briefly. So he talked me into coming, and he said, I'm going to retire, basically, if you don't come. So
That guy's never retired.
Yeah, so he guilted me into coming, and then he stayed there maybe 2 or 3 months, and he never came back. He went somewhere else. So I stayed on. So I think it was in a coaching, semi-coaching, informal
Capacity.
way at that point. I don't know if there was a formal class set up, or we were just doing open mat stuff, or I can't really remember.
So was Mike Sethner part of the? Because I know so ground control history is they were at first started at Mike's garage, obviously.
Yep.
So when did you?
Yeah, so I went to Mike's garage
Okay.
several times. Mike came to Strike Force one time because we used to do an open mat 1 day a week or something, and Mike had come there, and I think I'd met Mike online, and I ended up going down to the garage, I don't know, maybe a dozen times, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To go roll with the guys there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think they just do, I think it was a weekend, Sunday morning or something like that they used to do. So
Yeah.
Just used to pop in there and have a roll with the half a dozen people that were there.
Yeah.
Pretty small space, you know. It was literally just a single story, single garage. So just like you see in the old Kiwi backyard. So yeah, it was good.
So your jiu-jitsu at that time, was it like, because obviously you would have been competing for like quite a while then, even in like training. So like, what is your jiu-jitsu like with those guys? Like, were you teaching those guys some stuff?
Brazilian?
Or? Yeah.
So I guess for me, I'd never done Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I think I'd done one class with Andy Craven when I was at ground control.
Yeah.
Probably done one with Daniel Lima just in the course of time, and one with Douglas Santos. So my sole BJJ exposure, I think I did a seminar with John Will out of ground control as well, actually. But up till I came to Beachlands in Mallows, that was it, four classes, I think.
So that's it.
Yeah, that was it. But I'd done judo, I'd wrestled, I'd done catch, you know, so it's all similar, and I could blend it and do whatever. But yeah, that was my BJJ lineage, and I'd competed in BJJ tournaments. Many of.
So, but I mean, when you were with Mike and them, like in the garage days, like were you in terms of skill level like above them because of all the competing?
Yeah,
or
I'd done a lot more at that stage. They were pretty new, you know. They'd come out of Aikido. I don't think Mike had his blue. I think he was a white belt, so they were all white belts at that stage.
Yeah.
And I was probably sitting at blue belt level equivalent, so I was ahead of them slightly.
Yeah.
But I was competing every weekend, basically.
Yeah. It's amazing that there was like that many like competitions back then.
Yeah, well, it's not New Zealand. You're saying New Zealand, Australia. Were you going other countries?
Yeah, mostly in New Zealand, but
Okay.
I'd compete in anything. So I did Kung Fu one weekend, Taekwondo the next weekend, Judo the following weekend.
But if you got like a Taekwondo thing, like how do you know what were you just going there, okay, I'm just going to throw some kicks now?
I just do whatever I want to do. And
this is the part I actually wanted to know about Neil, because I feel you're like a little bit like an onion. You peel the layer, and then there's another layer of martial arts that he knows. Because when I do some sparring with Neil, it's exciting, but a little bit scary sometimes because I don't know what's going to happen, which is fun, right? And so I do remember we were throwing some punches, and then you did a massive judo throw on me, and I'm looking at the ceiling going, okay, what just happened? So what martial art do you not know, or...
You don't know what you don't know, right?
Or maybe go back to John's question. Yeah, you just rock up to a tournament and go, oh, this is a Taekwondo one, so I'll just throw some more kicks.
Yeah, and that was really it. And we had a lot of blended tournaments back then. So sport jiu-jitsu in New Zealand is not a grappling-based art. It had a stand-up and grapple. So they had people from every discipline, right? So I guess for me, if I could kick and they couldn't, then I was going to win that match. If I could wrestle and they could kick, I was going to wrestle them. So
interesting.
Kind of a natural ecology of MMA, I guess.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes MMA so awesome, is that, you know, it's just this blend of different martial arts. And so if one person is good at something, you can counter that with another martial art. And so it's, you know, because if you look at even, you've met Vic, like that dude, when he throws a kick, like you don't want to stand like in front of that dude because you'll get your head knocked off.
Right.
It's like, I think that's where you see the power of some of those martial arts. Like they're just so good at that stand up, and if you're at a certain distance and they're able to get you ahead, or to your body, I guess, as well. But yeah, it's just like, oof.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, they've been around hundreds, thousands of years, right, refining their own piece, and MMA's been around for 30 years. So all you can do is steal the best bits off them. Yeah, really.
Is there a particular tournament that you rocked up that was like, I don't know, a Tai Chi one? You're like, I'm going to do this. I'm just kidding, but it was like a karate one, and you're like, no, I got this. Like, is there one that was a bit weird, but you still?
No, I don't think so. I mean, as I said, I used to compete every weekend basically, so I was pretty busy. I used to paint my gis, So,
Okay.
So if it was a gi tournament, I would wear a painted gi. So I had Ninja Turtle, I had Spider-Man, and I remember one tournament I had the old silly string
Okay.
inside my gi, so I could Spider-Man people like that. But yeah,
And this was just allowed? They're like, okay,
yeah, it was kind of everybody knew that there would be something.
there'll be
happening.
something.
So, yeah,
This guy's going to come in and
yeah,
do something.
yeah.
That's what we should do these competitions now, man. It's like,
No.
Bit less serious, maybe.
yeah, it's too serious.
I think if you came in as a Spider-Man and you're doing silly string on me, I'd be like, what the? It'd be interesting. Okay. And then I believe out of all this martial arts, you're also an official referee.
Yeah,
Or
well,
I don't know
yeah.
what the term is.
Yeah.
Where's
yeah.
that transition?
So I guess I started promoting. So I was promoting MMA in about 2006, 2007, I guess, after I kind of finished fighting. So we're doing some small shows. Me and Hamish actually owned a company together called In Spirit Challenge in New Zealand.
In Spirit Challenge.
Yeah, which
Okay.
is based off the Japanese affiliate and also one in Australia. So we started one up here and we concentrated on amateur MMA at the beginning. We based it out of the ABA in Auckland. We did that for a wee while, and then the In Spirit thing started to fall apart. It was just too limiting, so we changed out and we changed our name, but we kept the show running and it slowly got bigger and bigger. At some point in that piece, I realised there was no officials in New Zealand, which made things really hard.
So you guys were doing it all the time, basically.
Yeah, so I was promoting and reffing, and it was stuff I didn't, I don't like to blend the two sometimes, promoting matchmaking and refereeing the fight are not necessarily the best thing.
Yeah, true.
So I started to train people to become officials way back then, maybe 2009, something like that. So I was training people then to get them in. We built up quite a big body of officials at that point. And then once I wrapped the show up, then I started to get back into reffing more myself. So now done a lot of shows all around the world. So
Yeah. So what made you want to start the promotion stuff? Was it just like the natural progression of like stopping competing and wanting to kind of like bring that new generation through, or?
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a gap. So at the point I was probably training Shane and Evander very early. So I started training them when they were about 14, I think, 13, 14. So I'd been training them. We had some pro level shows running at that time in New Zealand. So we had Hex, for example, was quite a big show that had come in.
Is this Hex in Australia?
No, sorry, Hexstream it was called over here. So slightly different affiliate.
Okay.
But yeah, there was nothing for amateurs, so it was kind of you were either on the big show or you were training in your gym, and there was nothing in between. So we saw a gap there. So Hamish was probably the lead on it. To be fair, now looking back, he was like, we should do this, we should do that, we should stick to this amateur game, build people up, give them to these big shows. So I was like, yep, cool. Those big shows sort of dwindled away, didn't exist anymore.
So who was running those bigger shows?
So Billy Scanlon and Tom Napara were running the Hexstream show. There was probably some others going on around the country, but that's particularly the one I remember, and that was Auckland based. And yeah, they sort of stopped. So then we were training all these amateur fighters, but they didn't know where to go after that particularly. So at that point, Melody McDonald came on board, and I made a decision really that I wanted to provide something into the upper market as well, so amateur through to pro, and we started to move that way. And Hamish and I sort of split at that point, and that's when we started ICNZ.
Okay. I see. Okay. Yeah.
So yeah. And yeah, we did that for I think we did 20 fight shows and half a dozen sub-grappling shows, and sold some clothing line and stuff like that. Before it just became financially unsustainable and too much work, and we ended up,
Yeah, I think people just like underestimate like the not the people doing it, but I think people who are looking outside in just see a bunch of mats and a cage and whatever else, and some people, but it's
everything behind the scenes to make one of those.
Yeah, it takes a lot of. Just personal time. Like it's not just the show. Like it's the organizing afterwards. Before that, and
And I think we made the mistake not being gym based. So there was two of us. So we would start at North Shore Event Centre at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. Set up cage, set up lights. We'd leave there at 4 the next morning. So it was a pretty heavy workload. And I think we were turning over in a year about 340,000. So, and we were breaking even if we were lucky on each one. So there was
Damn.
a hell of a lot of risk,
Yeah.
all on selling tables, selling tickets.
Yeah.
So if you didn't sell those tables, tickets, you're probably out 60K
Oh,
straight away. So, yeah.
So how did you how did you guys go around like promoting the events, like especially like back then, like probably hardly any social media and
Yeah, so Facebook was around.
Okay.
And Facebook was big back then, right? So that was a primary, I think. And then a lot of word of mouth and being a bit unique,
Yeah.
I guess, at that time, sort of brought people in. Yeah, we were working a lot with gyms. I was doing a lot of matchmaking with gyms that kind of were either independents or one or two fighters, and they would just bring along their family because it's first time out,
Yeah.
So we sold a lot of tickets, but we had some tough times too. We went through volcanoes going on in the Philippines that stopped all the flights out of Aussie, so you lose all your tickets and all your fighters, and having to renegotiate them, injuries to top level fighters, and then last minute having to bring someone in from the US or Europe. It's a tough game.
So when you're bringing in those fighters, obviously you're paying for tickets and
Yeah, so we paid, even our amateurs, we had a 3-class system, I guess, novice or B class, amateur at A class, and then pro. So we paid, even our amateurs, we'd pay them something. It wasn't a great deal. We'd give them $150 on top of their travel and expenses for showing up. So, but to cover their tape and their training costs, that's probably about it. And then for pros, obviously, they got paid all their accommodation, flights, and a show bonus, a win bonus.
yeah.
We had some good sponsorship. We were lucky. We had Grab a Seat. We had KTM motorcycles all sponsoring, so took a little bit of the load off, but still a lot of financial risk.
Yeah, for sure. So was that what you were doing like full time?
No.
Okay,
It's
so you were doing that
part-time.
on the side
Yeah,
while
always
working.
part-time.
Yeah.
Most of the work was done late at night.
Yeah. So
you could have been the next Dana White.
That was a dream. It was probably a faulty dream, but
No, everyone needs a good dream.
everyone has a good dream. Yeah.
But yeah, it was good. I asked it, and we got to see a lot of good fighters go through. They debuted Israel Adesanya.
Really?
So yeah, as an amateur. So
Yeah.
Why did they boo him?
debuted him.
Oh, debuted him.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
What did you think?
Booed. I thought he said booed. I was like, oh, why are they booing him? I was like, okay.
No,
Debut, that
never
makes sense.
Never boo Israel. He's one of the best human beings I've ever met.
Really?
Incredible person. Yep.
Tell us a little story. Go on.
So everything about him, mate. From the minute I met him as an amateur fighter, I think he'd done 3 or 4 Thai boxing fights as an amateur and no MMA. He came up from down the line. Didn't have a gym. Was coming up with himself and a couple of mates. I'd offered to put him up in one hotel. He didn't want to stay there. He wanted to have the money because he was pretty broke, I think, at that point. So he sorted his own hotel. I said, I'll drive out there and I'll give you your show money and I'll give you that extra cash just so you got it. And I showed up and there was this kid with this like Kid and Play haircut, for those of you old enough to remember Kid and Play. And just everything about him from that meeting point there, you could tell there was aura about him, and just a super nice kid.
So when you met him, you could say, hey, this guy's going to go far?
I didn't know what his skills were going to be like
Right.
Until I saw him in the ring, and then it was a ring back then, by the way, not a cage. And when he was there, like he got taken down, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 times. But he was already showing some rubber guard and stuff like that for a kid that was training out of Whakatane kickboxing or wherever he was. So
Right.
yeah, you could tell the skill level was there. It was just whether the switch was going to be made.
Right.
And then if we fast forward to UFC Auckland a few years ago, I was standing there, and as an official, you can't talk to any of the fighters. You're not meant to communicate with them at all, anything. And I'm standing by.
So
the barrier.
why is that?
It's a very American model, so it's all about keeping separation.
Yeah, you don't want to think the ref or someone's on the inside
Yeah.
working with them. Like, we're going to make some money.
Yeah.
Did you put money on the other guy? Yeah, I did. Okay, you drop in the second round.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff around that, protecting that integrity, I guess, of the sport. But yeah, I was standing there at the barrier, had my back to the barrier, and I felt this arm like grab me on the shoulder, and it pulled me back, and Israel leans around beside my head, and he goes, "Look around, you built this." And I was like, man, like goosebumps all over me. I was like, man, you didn't need to say that. You're a world champion. You did this.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of person he is, and he always, when you see him in a social setting or cage side somewhere where he's not on the TV, he's always making time to go and see kids and stuff and make their day. So He's a pretty cool person.
Damn, that is cool.
Yeah.
Get him
Yeah.
to our gym.
Yeah, yeah,
Gosh,
Imagine
jeez.
that. We're all
Imagine.
standing there going, okay,
yeah.
let's go. That'd be cool.
I think we are. I mean, I've always said it a lot anyway. Like, we're very lucky, like the caliber of people we have. We were talking about that just on Friday, just at our Christmas party. Just the level of people we have in this area. Yeah, it's just like it's very unique. I think
Yeah, it's
So,
strange, actually.
it is.
It
Yeah,
is.
yeah. I mean,
we're in
there
the middle
was
of nowhere, and we've got all these people that have been very,
yeah,
like, done a lot in this industry or
yeah,
have a lot of experience.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you think about Barron and Boss and Saeed, I mean, they're all incredible
Well,
coaches, right?
there was a guy at our Christmas party. You're sitting there, who's like a big boxing dude. I forget his name. What do you know his name? No,
I don't know.
I forget his. Anyway, he was sitting there, and like I introduced myself, and then Ravinda was like, "Oh, no, this guy's my boxing coach." And then when he started, he's been, he's like a huge boxing guy who's like medical dude, and anyway, the Ravinda them are going to be looking at this and probably going, "You idiot." But yeah, even for this guy to like be in our area is like,
Yeah,
is
actually,
a lot.
we've got a boxing doctor out here too. Yeah,
I think that's the
Dave
same guy.
Bernardo.
It's like
Yeah,
I think that's the guy I'm probably talking about. Yeah,
Mm.
like he knows all the
Yeah, there's
The
a
major
handful
guys.
of boxing doctors in the country, really. So
Yeah.
they're pretty small,
yeah. So we got like we're very, very lucky, I must say. So it's yeah, big things coming next
Yeah,
year.
we attract some nice people in this area. That's good.
Yeah.
Tell me some more stories about you being an official, traveling the world. What are some of the stories that stand out? Matches that you had to ref, good calls you've made, bad calls you've made.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the official journey is the same as a fighter journey, right? And people don't really understand that. You need to get ring time, you need to get time and exposure, and you don't get good at being a ref. You can learn the rules, but you don't get good at it until you've been through some bad pieces. You need to see those unusual things happen, and because it's not always black and white as to how they unfold. So yeah, you need to clock up time. You need to clock up matches. We find that hard down here. We don't do a lot of matches. I think I've done maybe 50 this year, but internationally there's guys
5-0.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think internationally guys are doing 300, 400, 500 a year. But yeah, it's I've been lucky. I got into the IMF program, done the Mark Goddard courses and stuff like that. So this year I did the ABC course, which is the North American big course that covers the unified rules. So I spent a week in Louisville doing that.
How does that work? Do you have to pay a truckload to do that course, or
New Zealand Mixed Martial Arts Federation paid for me to go, so
Okay.
I didn't pay anything. They paid for the course fees, they paid for the accommodation, the flights, and they paid for food and allowance to get there and back and every day. So for me, it was a neutral cost,
nice?
time off work, but a neutral cost. So yeah, and then I came back and started, redeveloped our course content and gave some judging courses and inspectorship courses back here to bring that knowledge back, I guess. But yeah, as far as officiating, I guess the best one that I ever did was I was picked to do UFC Auckland. I think it was Dan Hooker Pearson was the big fight that I did. So I did that on the Sunday night. We flew out to Singapore, and then I worked the Asian Open all week. So I spent all week doing that, and then on the Sunday I worked UFC Singapore, and then flew back. So in the course of 1 week, I'd been in 3 big events and
Wow.
multiple fights.
So how do you get picked for that, Neil? Like, how does that all work?
The IMF thing, obviously, you need to be on body with doing their courses and be in the front foot. You need to submit a resume of fights that you've done recently. So I had to put together, the first time I did UFC, I had to put together my last 300 fights. And
300?
Yeah, and pull them together. And again, for some fighters internationally, it's 6 months work, 7 months work. So
Right.
a bit different over here.
Yeah.
I was lucky I'd done a lot in that year, so I was able to clock it up. So you put that forward. The commissions generally pick the refs and judges. So some states or countries have actual commissions and some have appointed commissions. So the New Zealand MMA Federation acts as the commission here. So you need to be in good standing with them, prove to them your work. They'll put you forward, and then the selection will be made.
Jeez, that's quite a massive. So what is? I didn't even know there was a MMA federation. Like,
Yeah. So it's reasonably new. It's been around for a few years, but it's kind of been establishing itself. So I think we'll see next year quite a big jump in that. So they have membership clubs. So they support things like NZ Grappler tournament. So
oh,
they
okay.
support that financially by providing medals and things like that. It's all done through membership. But yeah, certainly for me, they've sent me overseas to do these courses. They've run, when I came back and I was running courses, we had subsidised membership discount for attending referee and judges courses. So quite a bit going on in the space, but it'll become more evident, I think, next year as we push back through. They get funding through being a national sporting organisation, so they get funding through TAB, etc.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just. I know they're trying to do something similar for jiu-jitsu, but I think it's just. I don't know. I need some sort of like professional body or like professional people to actually be on it. It's like not like a bunch of just coaches from like different gyms going, okay, we should just have a federation, and like it needs to be done properly. I
Yeah,
feel.
that's the hard part, right? It needs to be driven from people who have love, but you do need the skill set and the knowledge to do it. So, and everyone's working as well, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Doing a
Yeah,
job, so.
yeah. I think it needs that separation. Like I think, like I wouldn't want to. I do realize like having like coaches from different gyms and having them in those, trying to form that federation. It's people because they're passionate about the sport and they want to see it moving forward. But just from a professional point of view, I just think to myself, I don't. Are you making that decision because it's good for your club and your fighters and like what you're doing, or is it actually best for like the whole of New Zealand?
Yeah.
And I think that's where the separation needs to be. Like like Steve and all these guys that do like an amazing job amazing work for the sport. But to have like those guys like on like a federation, like I'd be like, I wouldn't. Like, it needs to be have have that professional body, and then it's Steve and all the other clubs and stuff like that. We all coming along there and going, okay, we want to be part of this association, and then, then they telling us like, well, okay, what we basically getting out of it, and that's
and I think that's the secret sauce, right? And that's where NZMMAF will try to go next year. But I mean, being a federation, they have to have appointed presidents, secretaries, etc. It should be voted positions, and it should be transparent. And as you say, those decisions should be driven by majority, not by a singular.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But,
What's sorry, I'm going to change the subject. What's your anxiety, nervous level, if any? Because you're solid. You're a man of steel. When it comes to reffing a big match, do you ever get nervous?
Always.
Really?
Yeah.
And is it
even a small? It doesn't matter actually. Small match, big match, it doesn't really matter, to be honest. I think it's good though. I think you need it. It's a bit like when you're an athlete. If there's no nerve, you're probably not going to have a good performance.
True.
But I think I went through a period of reffing where I had none. I probably thought, it's good. I've seen everything that I'm going to see, and it's just working through a process. I know now it's not the case. I know that every match there can be something, and Mark and Kevin and I will have discussions 3 times a week about something that, did you read this in the rule? How do you interpret that? And we'll all have a different interpretation. So when you actually get into the nitty gritty, and you do 1,000 fights and one thing pops up that's unusual, you've got to be prepared to deal with it on the spot. So I'm not so much nervous now about stoppages, because they're split-second decisions. You're either right or you're wrong. And even when you're right, 50% of the people, you're probably wrong. So I'm pretty confident with those. But even when you make those stoppages, and I made one last weekend at Shuriken, you're like, was that too early? Was that too late? Was it the right time? And you always go and you watch that back and you review it. I spend 2.5 hours every day watching MMA.
Really?
And I don't watch for fights.
Oh, wow. You're just watching what the official's doing.
I'm watching which stance the referee's in, where he is in the cage, what his hand actions are, what his verbal actions are. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I've done 2.5 hours every day since September 2nd, 2015.
So you're just watching the latest matches, though?
No, I'm watching anything.
Anything that's up.
Cage Warriors, Eternal, UFC, Road to UFC. Anything that I can find, I'll watch. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, because the reffing levels are different. I tried to stay within the unified rule set, so I don't watch much one because they use a different rule and I don't understand it. It confuses the action, but
Right.
yeah. So I tried to stay within unified, but I'll watch amateur events from Midwest US through to big events at the UFC pay-per-views.
Wow.
So the Shuriken guys, like, how did you get involved with? Like, when did they actually start? And I remember Matt Perkins doing like a Shuriken event like years and years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did that all evolve?
So I think I was still running ICNZ at that. Well, I know I was still running ICNZ at that point. Shuriken arrived. So Jason and Strenny arrived from South Africa, and they were talking about setting up events at that point. They operated on North Shore, and I was running events out of North Shore, I think, at that stage. And they were running around like the YMCA and a few other smaller venues at that point. So I had either seen them at a show while I was there for ground control, or they reached out separately. And I remember we had to sit down at McDonald's and a bit of a chat about which way we were going to go forward and make sure we don't schedule same days, etc. And then they didn't have refs, they didn't have medics, they didn't have all these other things that I could help them facilitate. So we ended up, even though we were competitors in some ways, we ended up collaborating quite a bit on information. And then once I moved into North Shore Events Centre, to get in there was quite a rigmarole. So I had to write up health and safety plans, how I wasn't going to damage the basketball courts, how many staff I was going to have, how I was going to contain smokers, how we're going to serve alcohol, all these different bits and pieces. And then Jason asked them if he could go and run shows there as well. And they wanted to be a hub for Indie MMA, really.
Right.
So they came to me and said, what do you think? Can we let this guy in? And obviously gave the green light. And then, Jason came into North Shore Event Centre, or Event Finder as they call it now. And then eventually we finished and Jason continued. He was also using our cage for quite a while. And then when we wrapped up, he bought the cage off us. So.
Jeez, and so that's quite a unique thing, like having a competitor come in effectively. And then, so how did you feel like when they first arrived? Like, were you like, who are these guys?
Yeah, it's been so many arrive, John, and either talk or run one show that it's kind of like, let's wait and see, it doesn't really matter. But I mean, it was a real hotbed for a while. We had Supremacy, we had Shuriken, and we had ICNZ all working out in New Zealand. Carl and I get on really well. We've trained together for a long time, but there was a lot of conflict about whose show when, all this sort of thing. Two different markets that I saw, but caused a bit of conflict. But it was the best time ever for New Zealand to have 3 shows all running professional fights at the same time. We had so many fighters drifting, wanting to fight, hungry to fight. It was managing the fighters rather than having to go and find them, which is kind of where they're at now. So Jason now is on Fight Pass, which means he has to have 6 pro fights every show. It's part of his contract. He will be finding that difficult to find those fighters in New Zealand, and we've seen from his last couple of shows he's having to bring even 2 Australians to fight each other here, which is unfortunate. And hopefully we can build up that pro base to get it back.
So why do we have that gap at the moment? Like, because we had like Shane, we've got the guys down at CKB, like. I thought we would have enough P guys here at least to because they would have gone through their time, and then surely there would have been like other people like behind them. So it just seems like there's been a bit of a gap.
Yeah, I think there's lots of good fighters. I think the fighter capability is better than ever before. I mean, you watch amateur fighters; they're really good. They're better than pro champions were in my day, that's for sure. But then also got to look at, people are going to reach a level where they're good and they have a possibility of getting to UFC. And this isn't a CKB knock, but they're going to move to CKB because it creates that avenue. So you end up with all the top fighters in one gym in Auckland,
and then they don't want to compete with each other.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and it's great for them, and it's great for CKB, and it's great for the sport in general. But it's affecting this, ability to fight against each other on a local format.
Yeah. So what because another good crowd is out in Hamilton, so the core guys.
Yeah.
So is that like another, like, how do you get that avenue to UFC? Is it contacts? Is it just how do you?
Yeah, I tend to think with everything, refereeing, fighting, etc., there's a bit of luck involved, right?
Yeah.
Once you get in the door, you're a little bit more stable than trying to break the door down.
Yeah.
So I don't know, to be honest, John, but I think you need to be known. You need to either have managers chasing them down and pushing you forward, or you need to be in a gym like CKB where they can already lubricate getting you through that.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And being down the bottom of the world, it doesn't do us a lot of favours in terms of exposure.
Mm.
It's a 12-hour flight to anywhere relatively.
Yeah. 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 No, it's interesting. I think it's because I mean Shane and them did they go to CKB? They did, hey?
Yeah, so
Eventually.
I'd finished coaching with Shane, and I sort of was very similar actually. So I remember talking to Shane and I said, look, I think I'm going to wrap up the coaching gig. I think I'm going to be done because I think I'd moved to Beachlands at that point. It was just too hard going backward and forward. And he was like, oh, good, I've been wanting to talk to you. I've been thinking about going to CKB. So I said, good, that'd be a great place for you. So I think I introduced him to Eugene, and then he started at CKB.
Okay.
It was all very close together, and it almost seemed natural.
Yeah.
And then obviously Evander went to CKB for a while, I think, and Josh went to Daniel Hooker's gym for a little while. And then Evander's now at City League doing kickboxing. Shane's still at CKB.
Okay. So Vander's still doing some stuff.
He had a long break, but he's recently had a fight out of City League.
Okay. So where they based?
In the city.
Okay. Yeah.
So it was all pretty organic, and it was good to watch that happen. And obviously when Shane went to UFC on his debut, he fought Volkanovski, and he rang me up and said, "Look, mate, I need a corner. Will you come over with me?" So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And for me, it was it was a first because they don't normally allow refs to corner. So I had to jump through a few hoops, but at the end of the day, because CKB needed me there, I believe that helped that case, and I got there.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. So part of your reffing, like, what's been out of all the fights, like, what's been the most craziest thing that's like happened inside the cage?
Ooh, there's been lots of crazy, I guess. I guess for me, the one I think about most often is the Hooker Pearson one, and that particular Auckland fight night, because the way it works is you all stay in a hotel, and then you get trucked or bused to the venue. So you've got to be at the venue quite early. I think it might have been 6:30 in the morning for that show. And you walk in the door and they hand you an envelope. You open the envelope and it's got the whole fight card, and it's got the 3 fights you're assigned to highlighted. And I looked at it and I think I had Luke Jamu, Kaikara France, Daniel Hooker. And I was like, Kiwi ref with all these international refs, 3 Kiwi fighters. I'm like, what's going on? So I was really nervous about that one. It could go really badly, and I knew them all, so it could have gone really badly. At the end, it paid off really well, and it was a good fight night, no blemishes, so it was good. And obviously Daniel Hook is a star for New Zealand. He's probably the unsung hero of New Zealand MMA. So I mean, people love him for his grit and determination, but in my mind, he's solely responsible for us having CKB and having champions here. So,
Right.
So to see him get that big win was important, and I'd watched Pearson for a long time. I was a Pearson fan, so it was cool to see him get that win over.
And what's what the craziest injuries that you've?
I don't even know if I want to know. I hate seeing them on TV. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, I've had a tib fib break, so a kick and a check, and the tib fib break and fall under. You've all seen them; they're pretty ugly. A few eye pokes and stuff.
Oof.
Yeah. Couple of one in particular, really nasty groin shot where couldn't recover in time and maxed out the 5. But yeah, other than that, I haven't had too many injuries in there.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, there's the ribs and the fingers and bruises and cuts, but I mean, they're not fight-ending, stuff.
Yeah. Good. So what's the? I know you took like a long sort of layoff, and I don't know if you're actually training during that time or not. But did you just want to take a break and then just kind of like reset and?
Yeah. So I part of it was moving out to Beachlands, I think. So I'd moved out here. I was still working at the airport, so the transit and timing was just bad. And then roles and kids, so young kids for a little while. So that kind of gave me an excuse to back off. And then my work roles were changing as well. So I took just over a decade off, I think, if I think back, and I didn't train at all in that decade. And in the last 5 years, I didn't even do any fitness training at all. So it was pretty minimal. And then, I think somewhere in there, probably at the 7-year mark, I started to see you around, John, and boss around, and you were like, come down the gym, and I'd be like, yep, I'll come down there, and just never got the socks on and got there to say. So, eventually got there. But it was a good 10-year break. I'd already had a 10-year break from grappling because I got sick of breaking my ribs. Just had enough of it. So,
Now you break other people's ribs. It's great.
So I'd stuck to kickboxing for the 10 years prior to that. So effectively, I didn't grapple from 2002 to 2022.
Yeah. I think it's like it's such a good case study for other people, because how many times people don't train for maybe 6 months or 9 months, and then they go and then they don't come back ever, because they go, I haven't trained for that long, and it's just probably going to be too hard, and then they just don't then end up training. It just shows that it doesn't matter how long you've been off for. Like I always say to people, like the mats never go away. You can always come back, and it doesn't matter if really how long you've been off. It's just it's just coming back and then getting part of it again. So
and to flip that, I mean, I probably would never have come back, to be honest, if it hadn't been for Brandon. The fact that he started to show an interest, and he was at that age where things start to go off the rails a bit, and get a bit big for their boots. So it was really good to come back with him. It was really hard coming back. I expected to walk in and mop the mat, to be honest. And I didn't, not by a long shot. In fact, I think back to when I used to grapple years ago, and I would hear people and they'd be breathing like, and then I heard myself do it. And I was like, oh my God. So it was really hard. It was really humbling. But it's been good, slowly getting back. And I think while the mats are always there, the trick is to never leave. Downscale, go to 1 day a week, but don't stop. I think that's the key to success, I think.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah. And I mean, it's been amazing having you at the club. So it's just with your experience and be able to train the other guys like Adam and everyone else who's like showing an interest in MMA, and even with jiu-jitsu, I think you bring such a different dynamic to techniques and stuff where I'm even learning. So it's been I'm so happy you've made the decision to come back and be part of the whole thing. So it's been awesome.
It's been really good for me, because not having that BJJ background, the technical stuff just wasn't there, right? I used to get passed on athleticism, I think. So returning and then watching the technique of how it's actually meant to be done, rather than just bully ahead with it. It's been really good. So, and the team down there are great. Everybody there is just friendly and welcoming. Always taking time.
Ford's a bit of a prick, but everyone else is great.
I knew that was coming.
Something had to be said.
He actually hurt his back.
He hurt his own back.
He was like sitting there. I was seeing him like he's like being really comfortable, like sitting like this, uncomfortable, and then you'd like sit like this. I'm like, what's wrong with you? He's like, Leo.
I had nothing to do with it. I had nothing to do with it.
I was like, what did Leo do? He's like, you hurt my back.
He's putting me in twisters and I'm not even complaining. Like, come on.
You tried to put me in a twister.
He tried to put you in a twister?
Yes. I was like, this is not going to happen. You're not going to twist it.
Well, you're black belt. You know how to get out of it. I was just like, what's going on? Oh, I'm in a twister. Oh, this sucks. But anyway.
Yeah.
But you're like the undercover assassin, because you're a white belt, aren't you?
White belt.
Yeah, you're not a white belt. You're not. So when I think one of the first times, I'll roll with this guy, white belt. Whoa, did I get my ass kicked? So I think you need a few more stripes and a few more color changes, and then I think you're where you're supposed to be. So
I struggle with that a bit, Leo, as to where I am actually supposed to be.
Untouchable. That's where you're at.
With the blue belts, and they're good.
We have some killer blue belts.
I used to compete with black belts,
Yeah.
That was the way I was. But the whole game is changing and evolving, and
yeah,
it's cool to watch.
Yeah.
yeah, it's just I always say to people, you know, it's just it's time on the mat. It's yeah, it's just, you know, I think back to Benny now, like, you know, getting his blue belt. I mean, you know, when he first started, it was him and the two brothers, Connor and Will, and you know, and I looked at the three of them, and you know, Connor was like, if he was still here, you would be still at the club, I'm sure, doing jiu-jitsu, but you know, he moved away. Will, you know, met some bird and, you know, Australian girl and moved there. So only really he was, you know, he's stuck with it. And I've just think about like where he was when he first started to like where he is now. It's just like, and he wouldn't be like if you went around. Like I just think, you know, with you and Boss.
He's really taken off since that first MMA the sojourn for him.
Yeah,
Just
for sure.
Acceleration, and I don't know what it was exactly, but it unlocked something for him.
Yeah, and just even his jiu-jitsu is just completely flipped on its head. Like he's, you know, from when he first started, which was like very aggressive and kind of like, you know, just moving forward all the time, to being very, very methodical, very flowing with his jiu-jitsu.
He's too good, actually. Can we remove him out of the gym?
Yeah.
Like, he's just too good.
Yeah.
I try to avoid him now in the rolls, you know, when you make eye contact with someone, like, oh, pins over this, I'll look over here.
Actually, Leo, I looked around the other night after a rest roll, and I was just like, there isn't any. You're going to get a hard time with every single person, you know.
Which is good for us, right? It is.
Good.
Yeah.
A story about Wills, though, because he came back briefly, did a couple of weeks.
Yes, yeah.
So we were doing that takedown drill. So I think it was one person tried to defend, the other tried to take down. I didn't know who he was. And I go to him, you know, do you want me to defend first or go first? He goes, you can do whatever you like. You're not going to get me down, and I'm going to take you down anyway.
So
he said that to you?
So I was like, right, I'm going to suplex this kid on his head. It took me about 10 seconds to flip back, and then I was like, no, I'll just play.
How nice
For
of
a
you.
moment there, I'd re-engaged and hold energy.
It's like Mike Tyson, I'll unleash the beast. Oh, that would have been great if you did do it.
Oh man, yeah. No, he's a funny kid, but yeah, it's awesome. I think that's almost up basically, but Neil,
excellent.
thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you. Guys.
It's like I said, it's just been amazing having you at the club, and hope it continues. And it's been great to see you and Brandon kind of just, I love watching you guys on the mat and putting submissions on each other and slapping faces and whatever else. And
It's just some father and son energy.
yeah. So that's if anything, it's been amazing watching you guys the last year, 2 years, just kind of like growing together in the sport. I know you guys are going to Thailand now together to go train there, so that's going to be an awesome experience for you guys. So I hope it continues.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, and
That's it.
What's your plans?
Yeah.
For what? Getting slammed by Neil. He already does it. Just come down Tuesdays, Thursdays, see it in action.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So anyway, so Christmas edition. So Merry
done.
Christmas, everyone.
Yep.
Happy New Year, and we'll catch you guys in the new year, I guess. Cool.
Perfect.
All right.
Thanks
See
all.
ya.
Thanks,
Bye.
Neil.